I actually moved back to Madison a year ago, last June 2014, and the very first, even before I went out and bought furniture, the very first thing I did was come to Vegan Fest. I had just learned about it, it was close, I was like, oh my gosh, and I walked in and saw all these vendors and thousands of people sampling vegan food and learning about these issues, and let me tell you, I felt right at home again. So I want to thank the Madison community and especially give a huge shout out to Alliance for Animals for organizing this amazing event. Give them a big hand. Yay Hannah, we love you. And raise your hand if you are, I know there's a lot of volunteers. Bob, I just saw you. Anybody here volunteering to make this vegan fest? Yay, let's give them a big hand. Look at all the purple shirts. Oh, speaking of purple shirts, look, I got mine. So check it out, wear it proudly all over Madison. Well, I'd actually like to start with a few questions. I'm going to take a little informal poll here. Raise your hand if you've ever cared for a beloved companion animal like a dog or a cat. Anybody here ever cared? Yeah, okay, just a few of us. Okay. Raise your hand if you've ever kissed that dog or cat. Okay, you've kissed them, all right. A lot of us, okay. Now raise your hand if you've ever kissed a dog or a cat on the lips. On the lips. Okay. And finally, raise your hand if that beloved dog or cat or bird that you have kissed on the lips ever showed emotions like happiness or fear, yeah, or joy. I think anyone who has ever shared their life with a beloved dog or cat would unquestionably say that of course they feel emotions and they have feelings just the same as you and I. I mean, the fact that we know and experience the emotional life of animals that are in our lives so readily is so clearly apparent if you've been on YouTube. Yeah, the incredible amount of videos and Facebooking, and you just can't get away from it. I think I saw one, it was bad dogs or something, and the whole site was these dogs that had been bad, you know, and and their parents would come home and the dogs had chewed all the toilet paper and the dogs were literally on the floor with their cute little, you know, paws doing this, you know, and there's just a whole lot of those videos, right? Am I right? Okay. So clearly understanding someone, it seems to be facilitated by getting up close and personal with somebody, you know, living with somebody. You really get to know somebody when you live with them. Am I right, girls? You know, anybody been married here? So you get to know them when you live with them. And in this society, we don't get to know farm animals, we kill them. I'd like to take another poll. Has anyone here ever cared for or lived with a companion pig or cow or chicken? Okay, I see a few. Has anybody here ever kissed that chicken or cow on the lips? Oh yeah. Now, I know there are some of you in the room wondering, how do you kiss a chicken on the lips? Admit it, you're thinking about this. You just have to be really, really careful, trust me. So, so I'd like to propose that we get to know farm animals, not as breakfast, lunch, or dinner, but as the feeling, emotional, sentient beings that they are. And to help us all do that today, since we can't run out to our local sanctuary, I'd like to tell a few stories of animals that I have come to love and know over the many, many years that I've been doing farm animal sanctuary work. One of them was a little chicken named Henny. I know, real original, but we had just taken in 1,500 other laying hens, ones used for egg production, because tornadoes hit a huge egg factory farm in Ohio. Some of you old timers may remember that. The animal rights movement kicked it into gear. There were overnight millions and millions of birds trapped in cages. And so we just went in and tried to free as many as we could. So Farm Sanctuary had just taken in 1,500 laying hens, and we had capacity for about 200. So we had chickens everywhere. If you lived near Farm Sanctuary and you had a garage, you had chickens in your garage. But we got a call from the ASPCA that they had a chicken. A bus driver had just brought them a chicken. It turned out that this chicken was found on a New York City bus. And the bus driver and the whole bus was like, oh my God, there's a chicken. And everybody kind of rallied together to save this chicken. And the bus driver actually drove the bus to the ASPCA. Poor guy, probably got fired. And he brought the ASPCA this hen, and then they called us. And when I heard about this story, I was like, oh, heck yeah, we got room for one more, you know? And she was a former laying hen. She was a little Rhode Island red, and she had been debeaked, as all, you know, egg production birds are. And I thought, my God, this little creature survived a factory farm. She survived going to the slaughterhouse, which is where all the egg layers go, if not buried alive. And then somehow she ended up on a city bus, and then somehow she moved everybody to bring her to the ASPCA. Of course, we had to take her in, but we were full. So Henny came to live with Jean and I and our 3 dogs and 2 cats, and we were all living together in literally a little 450 square foot apartment on the Farm Sanctuary premises. And at first I was a little bit nervous. It's close quarters, and I didn't want my dogs to annoy her. So at first I thought, well, we'll just keep her in our bathroom. So that lasted about 30 minutes because she started squawking, like, why am I in here? I'm like, okay. So I opened the door really carefully and was watching the dogs. Well, I learned really quickly that it wasn't the dogs or the cats that I needed to, or the chicken that I needed to worry about. It was the dogs and cats, because Henny immediately ruled the roost. I've never seen anything like it. At night, after a long day of work, I'd be crashed out on the couch watching something stupid on TV, and the cats would, of course, usually sit on my lap. Well, that first night that she was out of the bathroom, which was the first night, she walked over to me, she looked at me, I'll never forget this, she looked at the cat and then jumped onto my lap, and the cat went screaming, flying off my lap, and you know how cats can give you that indignant look, like, what? It's totally, it was, and she just sat on my lap for the next, hour, just, as happy as could be, while the dogs and cats were like, what has just happened? And then we go to all climb into bed, the 2 people, the 3 dogs, the 2 cats, and I put, by this time I knew that Henny couldn't stay in the bathroom. She was not going to tolerate that. But I thought, okay, well, she'll stay. I fixed up some little towel area in the kitchen, what was kind of the kitchen, and I thought, okay, she'll just stay there. Kid you not. We all climbed into bed. I heard this little tip-tap, because she had nails, tip-tap, it was a wooden floor. And she came to the bottom of the bed, and she looked up at us, and I'm thinking, oh, heck no, oh no, you are not going to jump onto bed, And she did. She came onto our bed. And at this point, everybody's kind of like, okay, this is too much, but I've got kind of a soft heart. So I was like, okay, she wants to sleep with us too. So I put the little towel at the foot of the bed, and she stayed there, And that was how we all lived for like 2 weeks. And I'll tell you, as somebody who's been around many, many, many chickens, even I was like, wow, this is an amazing little being. She clearly wanted to cuddle with us. She wanted to, be with us. She didn't want to be separate from what was her new family. She completely adopted us. And she learned, this was amazing, she learned by about the 3rd day what a refrigerator was. And when she wanted a treat, she would just go and peck at the refrigerator door. It was incredible, And I was like, and it was it was a remarkable experience. I tell you, Henny was a great teacher for me, because even though I've been around a lot of chickens, for the most part, they were out in their barns. But this time I really got to be up close and personal. I got to have a chicken as part of my family, and it just opened my eyes to all that one chicken can be. Now, of course, eventually Henny did have to go live with her own people, but and she was very happy there too. But she really touched my heart as a teacher. Another animal that I remember really vividly was this cow named Phoebe, and her adopted son, David, who was a sheep. Phoebe, let me back up a little bit. Phoebe was a dairy cow. She was actually on a small dairy farm in upstate New York, and the conditions were so severe, and let me tell you, they have to be really severe for the local authorities to do anything, that finally they had stopped feeding them and they were dying. And finally local authorities went in and they called us to help, and we said, of course, we'll take them all. I think there were like 27 cows. And so throughout her whole life, Phoebe had been a production dairy cow, which means that, you know, every 9 months she gave birth to a calf, and then the calf was taken away from her so that humans could drink the milk intended for her calf. And she was an older dairy cow. Older is, you know, 4 to 5 years. So she'd probably have this happen, you know, 3, 4, 5 times, her baby's taken away. And she had mastitis and laminitis, all kinds of problems, and she couldn't walk well. So we found that we couldn't have her with the other cattle because she was getting bumped too much, unintentionally, of course. And so we put her in a stall in her own little pasture where she could still see the other cows, but she'd be safe and we could give her good health treatments and care and so forth and so on. At the same time, we took in this little guy, this old as the hills sheep named David, and he was blind. And so he couldn't be with the other sheep because he would get, you know, rustle around. And so we cautiously put them together. And I'll never forget it. It was love at first sight. Phoebe bounded as much as she could run. She bounded over to David and just started licking him all over. And he loved it. He loved it. He was right up there, you know, nuzzling against her and rubbing up against her, and she's licking on him. It was just a total love fest. And as the days went by, we would start to notice that whenever David, you know, treaded off a little bit too far, because, you know, let's face it, he was old and he was blind, so he got lost a lot. And he would, you know, kind of meander out a little bit too far for Phoebe's liking. And we knew it because the entire farm, I think the entire village of Watkins Glen heard this, you know, and it was huge. It was really loud, and we would all run out like, oh my God, what's going on? And Phoebe would look at us like, David's missing. David, and she would be really flustered, you know, like we all, I mean, imagine if, you know, one time Reggie, my little love of my life, Chihuahua, he disappeared, you know, and I was like, oh my God, where, you know, I was completely flustered. And that's how she was, like any mother would be, because by this time it was clear that David was Phoebe's son. So, you know, this went on for probably about a month, and it was just so heartwarming to see this beautiful bond that developed, and also to experience and see the emotions of a mother, you know. And mother cows, boy, are they strong mothers. They bellow and cry for days when their babies are taken from them. And we saw this firsthand, you know, David, you know. And it was just heartwarming and heartbreaking because, of course, we realized that this was the first baby that she got to keep. And boy, did she hang on to him tight. Well, as I said, David was very old, and he did pass away. And we couldn't even take David away from her. We tried, and she was like ready to kill us. And she bellowed and she cried for about 5 days. And the second day, we had to, you know, and so while some of us distracted her, we went and grabbed David so that we could bury him. And I'll just never forget those cries as long as I live. And I'll also never forget the love, you know. The mother love. I mean, imagine, you know, she can give that kind of love to this adopted old blind sheep. Imagine how she feels for her own babies. It is so strong, that emotion of love, you know, in farmed animals. I was thinking of stories too as I was like, oh, which ones should I share? There are so many. And of course I thought of Hope. Hope was a pig that we found in the stockyard loading docks when we first started doing investigations of stockyards. And it was night, oftentimes we went in at night. And she had been left there, and other animals, as they were being unloaded, were trampling on her, and she had kind of crawled into a corner to try to get away from it all. And we realized the reason she didn't go any further was because she couldn't use one of her legs, her back leg. And so, of course, we picked her up in our arms, and we whispered sweet nothings, "You're okay now, you're safe," she probably was still trembling and terrified, but it made us feel better. And we took her back to the farm sanctuary at that time. Our first one was actually in Pennsylvania. And we were working with New Bolton, Pennsylvania Veterinary School. And we did all x-rays and ultrasounds. And it turns out she had, from poor conditions, disease, she had osteomyelitis. And whereas normally the joints kind of go together like that, hers were like this. And there was clearly nothing that could be done to save her leg. But we also noticed by this time that she was really just loving life. Now that she was out of the stockyard, she was loving life, and she would greet us each morning. I've never seen a pig express gratitude quite like Hope, because actually after a while, pigs are kind of like, yeah, really, But Hope, she was just like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Every day of her life, she expressed gratitude, and she could move around because she could use the one good leg, and she could use her front legs, and she would scoot up to greet us every morning, and she was just an absolute joy. And after she was about 2 or 3 years old, another little pig came in named Johnny. And he was a young pig. He was only about 6, 8 months old at that time. And he completely bonded with Hope. And furthermore, he took it as his role to protect her. And the pigs, let's face it, can be a little piggish about food, as we humans can be, especially vegan humans. And he would protect her. He would protect her from the other pigs. And at night, they would spend their whole day together. And he could be out playing in the ponds and with other pigs. But he decided to befriend this special needs pig who couldn't get up and go to the pond. And it was just, again, such a moving experience to witness that this little healthy pig chose to help this other pig out and befriend this pig and be with this pig all the time. And they sleep nose to nose, cheek to cheek at night. It was just, they were always together. And then Hope eventually, from putting so much weight on her front legs, eventually one of her front legs did give out. And at that point, we knew we couldn't give her quality of life. I mean, she couldn't even move at that point. So we did have to make the painful decision to euthanize her. And we did it as gently as we could with no other pigs around, and especially including Johnny. Johnny died 2 weeks later. And Johnny was a perfectly healthy, young, normal pig without any signs of disease. And we watched our animals pretty closely. And to this day, I really believe in my heart that Johnny died of a broken heart. There's no other reason. And after what I witnessed, this bond that they had, and we know this happens to humans, when, especially couples that have been together for years and years and years, and one spouse dies, and sometimes not long after that, the other does. We know this happens with humans. And I was able to see it with pigs. I guess my last little story, there was this little downer calf that we took in. We were going to stockyards all the time to document conditions, and it started the whole downed animal campaign. And a downed animal, well, that's what they call them. It's so common that they had a name for these animals. They were called downers. You probably have heard of it. And they still could sell downed animals for food consumption as long as they were alive. So they would keep these animals alive at all costs. And I can't tell you the thousands, and I mean thousands of times that I have seen, calves dragged on and off the trucks, and dairy cows have chains around their legs and dragged on and off the trucks. I mean, it's just incredible. So not surprisingly, we would find downed calves. And calves we could pick up. Cows we couldn't, but calves we could pick up. So whenever we found them and we could get away with it, we would take them and bring them to the sanctuary. And little Lee was probably only a week or two old. He was a male, so he had been taken away from his mother, and he was going to be used for veal production, but because he couldn't walk, he didn't sell. And this time they didn't even bother with it, they just shoved him in a corner. And we tried everything. You know, when animals come in, especially from factory farms, stockyards, they have a lot of disease. So you have to isolate them from the other animals, and you know, give them all kinds of health care. So he was, of course, separated from all the other animals. And despite every treatment under the sun that we knew to do, he just wasn't getting better. And we knew we were getting to that critical stage where if he couldn't start walking and moving, they're ruminant animals, they have to be able to move, he wouldn't survive. So out of complete desperation, we had individual stalls in the cow barn, and we kind of put straw bales around so they couldn't touch nose to nose. And we carried him out there thinking, well, if he at least gets to see his own people, maybe that'll perk him up. I'll never forget this as long as I live. We put him in the little stall, all cozy. Then the other cows were out in the pasture, but somehow they knew something had just arrived, and they came running into the barn. It was like thunder, 30 cows all running into the barn. And then they stopped just outside the pen, and they were all looking at little Lee. Whoa, what is it? And then they all started mooing to him. These really soft, not the but just gentle moves. And little Lee, oh my God, I'll never forget his little face. His little ears perked up. And I swear, this is a vegan miracle. He started struggling to stand up and he fell down. He started struggling to stand up, he fell down. He started struggling to stand up and he stood up. And with incredibly shaky legs. By this time we were removing the straw bales. We didn't care. It was like, oh no, we have to connect everybody. And again, talk about the power of emotions and feelings and love, that both the cows at the sanctuary gave to this little man knowing he needed that. And then likewise, little Lee responding. Oh God, that's right. And we had, about a week later, or a week before, we had a school group out. And they really wanted to see little Lee. And we said, normally we wouldn't have, but we're like, okay, if you're really, quiet and you go up to him and I would always ham it up, like you have to say your name because once he gets to know you, he won't be afraid of you, and I would just work it, And the little kids, one by one, were all coming over, oh Lee, I hope you get better. And then they sent him all these cards, little drawings. I mean, it was just like everybody and their mother was rooting for little Lee, It's really my hope that if we see farmed animals as living sentient beings capable of the same emotions and feelings that a dog or cat or you and I have, that we'll want to do something to help them. Because here's this wonderful thing about this issue. Everybody can do something to end their suffering simply by what or whom we choose to eat. It really can be a wonderful life for all. Because I've been to, with my work, hundreds of stockyards and factory farms, and so probably thousands of slaughterhouses. And it was really clear to me why those animals were suffering. They were suffering because they were being raised for milk, dairy, egg, and meat production. Gosh, time just went by. When a mother's talking about her kids, time just flies. But very quickly, I've seen egg production and how to produce eggs, 4 to 5 hens are crammed into a cage about the size of this piece of paper. And after living there, we couldn't really call it living, after being there, because it's wire cages, their feathers rub off and then eventually, because they don't have any feathers to protect their skin becomes covered in sores and bruises. And I remember one of the first times I ever went to an egg factory, and I was just, oh my God, blown away. And I was crying and crying and crying as I was walking through this egg factory, documenting. And there was a little hen. She was so beat up. She didn't have a single feather practically on her. She was covered in sores. Her one eye was all swollen. And I just reached over to her and said, oh no, girlfriend, you're coming home with me. And I nursed her, God, covered her with heat wrap and all kinds of things, and I didn't think she was going to make it. But then one day when I sat down to give her treatments, she stood up and she walked over to me and she jumped on my lap. And that was as clear as a statement of thank you and gratitude as anyone could give or say that. I've seen dairy production and been to stockyards and witnessed untold dairy cows and calves being dragged to slaughter. And as I already mentioned, I've seen and witnessed animals at slaughterhouses waiting for their turn to be slaughtered. I'll never forget one of the first ones that we were able to get into to document, because needless to say, they didn't like us there, was this chicken slaughterhouse in Los Angeles. And we had gone real early in the morning, and we found out that the boss wasn't coming in for another hour. So we're like, okay, this is our chance. And we told the workers that we had permission, we're taping. And fortunately, I wore really baggy clothes back then, I still do. But I was taping and really focused on documenting, but my knees were shaking a mile a minute. I mean, I was just witnessing. And they were screaming. That was the thing I remember most. They were screaming. And, there was nothing we could do. We were there to document so we could show people. But as I was leaving, two of the chickens popped into my shirt. Just, whoops. And I had really big breasts that day as I walked out. Look at me. And I got to know those two little ones. I think we called them Louie and Huey or something real original. And again, within just a couple days of us caring for them, they were jumping on our laps and they were loving on us. And, seeing all this cruelty, I have to confess, did take a really big toll on me personally. And it's what, on the bright side, though, prompted me to start exploring Buddhism. I'm currently working with a lovely group of brothers and sisters with Dharma Voices for Animals. Many of them came out to support me, thank you, send me their love. And it's a group that's working to bring these issues, veganism, animals, to the 500 million Buddhist community. Because Buddhism does teach us that we have the ability through our thoughts and through our minds to save lives. I mean, anybody can stop the suffering of the Phoebes and the Hopes and the Lilies and the Hennys simply by choosing, again, what or whom they're going to eat. And it's because we can save lives just by our minds and what we decide to do and our subsequent actions that this, I think veganism is so powerful and it's so uplifting. And as we say in Buddha talk, it's so enlightening. The Dalai Lama said, I love this quote, "Where there is a mind, there are feelings such as pain, pleasure, and joy. No sentient being wants pain. Instead, all want happiness. Since we all share these feelings at some basic level, we as rational human beings have an obligation to contribute in whatever way we can to the happiness of other species and try our best to relieve their fears and sufferings. Your lives and the lives of farm animals are interconnected if you're eating meat, dairy, eggs, and other food animal products. Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a well-known Buddhist monk, he was my first teacher. Thousands come to see him when he speaks, and he has 3 practice centers here in the US, and that was one of the things I did after Animal Acres, was go and help them develop it. because he is a vegan and he has asked all of his practice centers to only serve vegan food because he recognizes the interconnection that we share with all beings. He says, being vegetarian here also means that we do not consume dairy and egg products because they are products of the meat industry. If we stop consuming, they will stop producing. Only collective awakening can create enough determination for action. I don't think that humans are cruel by nature. I really don't. There was a time I kind of did, but I don't anymore. And studies have shown that children at very young ages have a natural empathy, a natural kindness, and if they are in situations where they can choose to help another, to extend kindness, or to harm, they will choose kindness. They will choose helping. It would be a really rare individual to say, I don't care about animals, I don't care that they suffer, I don't care that they lead miserable, horrible lives, I don't care because I like the taste of them, I'm going to eat them. Yeah, there are probably a few of those out there. Ted Nugent comes to mind. But I believe he's suffering. The Buddhist in me knows that he is suffering. And we know that most Americans really, truly do care about how all animals are treated, including animals that are raised for food production. Poll after poll shows this. So clearly, there is just some kind of a disconnect, an unwillingness on the part of many people to understand farmed animals as animals. And I've wondered, why is this? I have asked that question, why, so many years. And I think it's partly because we don't get to know farm animals like we do other animals. And I think I have to say that it's probably partly because it's also in some people's self-interest not to get to know them, because I'm convinced that when you get to know them, when you get to feel them, when you understand that they feel and have the emotions and feelings just like you and I do, it's going to be a whole lot harder to eat them. So I kindly ask everyone to get to know farm animals. You can go to our local Heartland Farm Sanctuary, which, as I mentioned, I was helping out for a while. It's a great farmed animal sanctuary, and you'll get to kiss chickens on the lips too. And there's other, there's now farm sanctuaries in just about every state, and many of them, like Farm Sanctuary, you can go and stay there, and it's a great experience. And I encourage you to get up and close and personal with farm animals, because, you'll make friends, and they'll be friends for life. And I also ask you to please consider connecting with farm animals through your mind. Because I know not everybody here is going to rush out to a sanctuary, but everybody here has a mind. And I believe everybody here has a noble and compassionate heart. And I know that we have the ability through our hearts and our thoughts and our actions to really make a difference and to save so many billions of animals from a horrible existence. So to end very briefly, I want to give us an opportunity to connect with farm animals in our minds. So I'm going to take you on a little guided meditation. Don't worry, I know Buddhists can sit for like 2 hours, but I'm not going to make you sit for 2 hours. Just for maybe a few minutes so we can connect with our farm animal friends. We'll start our meditation beginning and ending with a bell, and I'll give you a guided meditation. So sit up, plant both feet on the ground, get comfortable, and if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes or gaze at the ground. And we'll begin with the sound of a bell, and then we'll end our meditation with the sound of a bell. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. In, out. Breathing in as I follow my breath, I send myself metta, loving kindness. As you breathe in and out, you may say to yourself, may I be well. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free. As you breathe deeply in and out, now we will send loving kindness to a beloved animal that we know. It could be our beloved dog or cat or the neighborhood squirrel. We'll send that animal that you know and connect with, loving kindness. May you be well. May you be happy. May you know peace. And may you be free. May you be well. May you be happy. May you know peace. May you be free. As we breathe in and we breathe out, please bring to mind a farmed animal who is suffering in a cage in an egg factory farm or at a stockyard or awaiting slaughter. With all the love and compassion in your heart, wish that animal, may you be well. May you be happy. May you know peace. And may you be free. May you be well. May you be happy. May you know peace. And may you someday be free. We dedicate the merits of our practice to all sentient beings everywhere. May all beings be peaceful, happy, and free. Thank you all for sharing this time with me. I'm really deeply grateful that you cared enough to come out and learn about these issues and how beautiful our friends are. Oops, and there goes a mic. And I wish you all the best on your path to liberating all animals everywhere. Thank you.